An update on the horrible Jeju Airlines 737 crash in Muan, South Korea on this episode of Taking Off. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken. The investigation into the devastating Jeju air crash at Muan International Airport, which occurred on December 29, 2024, has encountered a significant setback as both the Cockpit Voice Recorder, CVR, and the Flight Data Recorder, the FDR, ceased recording approximately 4 minutes before the aircraft's impact. The incident, marking the deadliest aviation disaster on South Korean soil, saw Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216, a Boeing 737-800 carrying 181 individuals, belly land without deploying its landing gear and subsequently colliding with a concrete barrier at the end of the runway and erupting into flames. Of the 181 on board, 179 perished, only 2 crew members in the way back of the plane surviving. The South Korean Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport confirmed that the CVR and FDR, critical for understanding the sequence of events leading to the crash, did not capture any data during those crucial final minutes. This absence of data has complicated efforts to ascertain the exact cause of the crash, although preliminary investigations have pointed to a possible bird strike, issues with the landing gear, and the positioning of the runway's localizer antenna as contributing factors. The South Korean Transport Ministry stated, "The analysis revealed that both the CVR and FDR data were not recorded during the 4 minutes leading up to the aircraft's collision with the localizer." The ministry plans to delve deeper into why the data was not saved, examining if it could be linked to a broader issue that might explain the crew's decision to land without the landing gear deployed. The damaged FDR was sent to the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, for further analysis, while the CVR was initially analyzed in Seoul. And the missing data has been noted as adding complexity to understanding the final moments of the flight. In response to this tragedy, South Korean police have conducted raids on Jeju Air's offices and Muan International Airport's operator to gather more evidence, and the airline's CEO, Kim Lee-bae, has been banned from leaving the country as part of the ongoing investigation. When this crash happened, my pilot friends and I looked at the initial information, and every one of us was like, well, the Cockpit Voice Recorder and the Flight Data Recorder will make crystal clear the cause of this crash. Well, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be the case in this crash of Jeju Airlines. The last 4 minutes of the flight, the critical part of the flight, is missing. Let's dive into what this means. First, timeline of the crash, and we'll focus on the final minutes, but for the timeline, let's go way back. Boeing designed the 737-800 series in the 1990s. It was part of Boeing 737 Next Generation, or NG series. Manufacturing started in 1997. The first one rolled out later that year. It was certified by the FAA in 1998, and the first delivery was in 1998. In 1999, the FAA introduced a rule mandating battery backup for the CVR on all aircraft manufactured after January 1st, 2003. The Jeju Air 737 was manufactured in 2009. The big question, why wasn't this 737 equipped with a battery backup of its CVR? In my research, some aircraft were exempt if ordered before the mandate. Also, it's possible that while the FAA required them, foreign governments have different regulations. Jeju Air, being a South Korean airline, would typically follow both FAA and Korean aviation regulations, but there might be nuances in how these regulations were implemented or enforced on their fleet. What's amazing to me here is that what was the worst U.S. crash at the time, American Airlines 191 Chicago, when a DC-10 lost the left number one engine after V1, it severed the electrical system, and the same situation, no CVR from the moment the emergency started. That was 1979. 20 years later, FAA introduced the rule to have a battery backup for the CVR. And now, 45 years later, this airplane crashed without a battery backup on the CVR. So now let's look at those final minutes and what we do know. At 8:54, tower gives landing clearance. 8:57, tower warns of birds. 8:59, on short final, the plane initiates a go-around, and a pilot from the Jeju Air 737 declares emergency due to bird strike. And it is at 8:59 that the CVR and the FDR end. The plane then sidesteps a little to the left of the runway at 9 o'clock. And then at 9:01, the plane is in a right bank, turning back to the airport, and tower gives them clearance to land runway 19. 9:02, the plane hits the pavement significantly down the runway, and it slides until 9:03 when it impacts the localizer antenna structure. What the pilots said to each other during that 4 minutes was not recorded due to a complete electrical failure. The engines on an airliner provide the electrical power for the aircraft systems that require electricity. With two engines, each one provides electrical power, so if one goes down, the other one can still provide power. There's a couple of other methods to get electricity when both engines are out. The last method is to power on the auxiliary power unit, or APU, but this would take time they didn't have. There is a battery system on the airliners that will send power to important systems that will last for as long as batteries can produce a charge. But they'll run down, and maybe after half an hour, it all depends. And this is what I'm sure is puzzling to the investigators. The loss of one engine would not have caused the whole electrical system to go down. And on short final, generally it's up to the captain, but flight crews are trained to continue the landing or to go around. Witness reports have said the gear was down initially on the final approach and the flaps extended, but at some point the gear and flaps were retracted, which would be a standard in a go-around. The CVR was what was going to answer these questions. Why did they go around and not land? Why was the gear retracted? Was it one engine that had a compressor stall? Or did both? Or did the crew, in addressing the emergency, shut down the wrong engine? Were the thrust reversers working? Now those answers are going to be a whole lot more difficult to determine. And it's not just to satisfy curiosity, to satisfy some need to know. There's a lot more at stake. If the crash is mechanical in nature, determining the cause can save lives in the future. Or if it was the pilot error, then new training procedures can be implemented and lives can be saved in the future. There was a crash near Colorado Springs in 1991, United 585. For years, investigators couldn't figure out what caused it. Dispersion was cast upon the flight crew. A seemingly perfect 737 suddenly flown into the ground. Then 3 years later, another 737 crashed on approach to Pittsburgh in the same manner. And again, people quick to conclusions thought maybe the pilots caused this by inadvertently, or even by panic, stepping on the wrong rudder pedal. Well, test pilots and simulators were able to recover every single time, so why didn't these crews recover? It was only after investigators recovered the rudder power control unit they found that the fluid remains very cold at altitude, and then on descent, hot hydraulic fluid in a few cases caused the unit to seize and deflected in the opposite direction commanded by the pilots and jam at the stop.
In the reversal scenario postulated by the NTSB, the pilot makes a high-rate rudder command to the left. The primary valve extends to its travel limit and should be followed by a movement of the secondary valve. However, the secondary slide jams to the outer case, allowing the primary valve to over-travel, resulting in a misalignment of the hydraulic ports. This allows hydraulic flow in the wrong direction and causes the rudder actuator rod to retract rather than extend, and moves the rudder in a direction opposite.
Boeing, of course, disagreed with the findings, claiming it was still pilot error. And so did the FAA initially. Then a special task force reported in July of 2000 that it had received many potential failures of the rudder system in tests, and the FAA changed its position. Boeing still held firm it was pilot panic, but they agreed to add some redundancy to the rudder control system, and time has proven the NTSB correct, as there have been no more crashes like this since the redesign. And this is why we need to know what happened. It might seem like pilot panic, but if we can ascertain the real cause, we can address that cause with solutions to prevent this from happening again. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our sponsors for making shows like this possible, like Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there, xevision.com, the other sponsors in the links below. And if you haven't seen our initial report on the Jeju Air crash, check it out right here. Thanks for watching, and remember, superior judgment trumps superior skills. Take care.